Welcome back, everybody. Today we're here with Tommy, who is a really good friend of mine, and he's a coach. And we figured we would do a Q&A. What's going on, Tommy? How you doing?
Not too much. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited about it.
And for those who watch my channel religiously, I don't wear the same clothes every day. I've just made 3 YouTube videos today. So if you happen to notice I'm wearing the same thing, that's because I film a bunch. So before we do the Q&A, so you posted questions on the, is it in Chase's Discord?
Yeah, so we got some from the Chase Irons Discord. As a small plug, that's something I recommend guys look into if they're looking for, quality information and quality sources. To be honest, if you're looking for supplements that you can't find a good source for it, Chase is a good place to find those things. Interest in home brewing, different types of supplements, that would be the place to go. But yeah,
I'll link down below if you send me the link to everything.
Yeah, no problem. So a lot of these came from the Discord, and then a lot of it came from our Instagram posts that we made. So we had a topic, you and I had a topic that we wanted to touch on a little bit, and I think some of these things are actually going to fit in there. So that might be a good idea.
It's about like coaching preferences.
Yeah, not necessarily even preferences, just kind of the different things you run into with different style of clients. And I'll let you kick it off, and then we'll just go from there.
So so Tommy and I started this before we were filming, and we were both coaches, and I feel like there's a lot of crossover between the experiences we all have. We all tend to attract slightly different people to some degree, but there's also a lot of similarities. And we were just talking about what the personality traits seem to be and like what the interesting interactions are. And I was saying that I think overall my favorite are probably amateur bodybuilders.
Yeah,
I think they're the most fun, like you.
That's likely my favorite too, and it's partly because I am technically an amateur bodybuilder, right? I've trained for 20 years, but regardless, I've only been competitive for 4 or 5 years now. So that's one reason they're one of my quote unquote favorites. I love all my clients, don't get me wrong, but and when I say favorite, I just mean low maintenance.
Yeah, that's the same way. I don't mean like I don't, because we'll get to that. I think it's a very interesting group of people, right? I think, and I typically only coach men, so I'm not really going to speak to women. I have coached women, but I typically stick with just men.
Yeah, I have a couple general fitness women. They're all great. They really no issues at all, to be honest. There's nothing I can even pinpoint. There's certain nuances that I want to say this the right way without being offensive, but you know what I mean? There's certain things like, hey, can I add creamer to my coffee? It's like, well, yeah, you can. I'd prefer that you count it. And I'd prefer you use something that's beneficial to health, at least in some way.
If you're adding it, should have a function.
It should have a function if you're going to add it. And if you strictly just need it, so you're going to stay compliant the rest of the day, okay, go ahead. If it's in there consistently, we can accommodate for it, right? If it's always there. Now I'm going to have a bunch of people messaging me about coffee creamer. But yeah, no, that's like some of the little nuances in women when they first start. At least what it seems is they're more worried with how the food tastes, and I often hear I cannot eat the same thing every day.
Okay, I've had that from women too. That seems like a more of a female thing, but
okay,
I'm not making it. I don't want to make a general assumption like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we got to be careful there.
Stuff, but it's not everyone. It depends.
Yeah,
I think I find, at least for me, I prefer to eat, the majority of my food is pretty similar. Like my breakfast is the same every day. The carbohydrate and the fat content vary depending on what day it is, but the contents of the meal have been the same forever.
Same.
And my lunch and my dinner are basically similar in composition. They're just, I vary the meat and the carbohydrate source typically, unless like I were prepping for show, it might be slightly more strict, but and then my other meals are generally, like at this point in my life, since I'm not prepping for anything, I generally tend to substitute with like a protein shake or something in between at this point.
Yeah, when I'm like when I'm like deep in the off season and I need food to taste good because you can't shovel down dry ass turkey and rice anymore. I'll do something like a low ingredient chicken sausage, maybe a gluten free pasta with a little bit of sauce in there or something, just to get my way through another 2 meals. And then I'll go back to the rice and turkey. But at least I broke through those 2 meals with a few little tricks here and there, right?
Yeah.
So that's about as fancy as I get.
I look at food when guys, we go back to the same food all the time. Like the way I look at food, probably similar to the way you look at food, or most guys who've been bodybuilders, is I have to eat so many meals a day that it's just a meal, and I have another one in 2 hours. So I don't really dwell on the taste of it because it just needs to get down so I can move on to the next one.
100%.
If I had time to think about the way I prepared everything all the time, I'd be cooking all day.
Oh yeah, and doing dishes all day.
Yeah. So that's the way I look at it. Now that doesn't mean everyone needs to follow that. You know.
My wife is a good example of this, and she would hate that I'm saying this, but when she first started really getting into fitness and things like that, I generally prescribe macros. That's how I do it, and then I give an approved food list.
Yep,
So no, you can't have Skittles for your carbs. You know, you can occasionally, maybe, right? Some type of
glucose, but it doesn't mean you should be eating it all the time.
Right. So she started getting really fancy with everything at first, and all the meals looked really good and they were satiating. And at one point she's like, man, this is a lot of work. She's like, I'm just gonna do chicken and rice. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, thank God you figured it out on your own. I didn't have to say anything. You know what I mean? Because most people find themselves there. I mean, it's such an easier process. Rice, potatoes, some type of meat every meal,
vegetable,
right?
Possibly, depending.
Yeah, throw a vegetable here and there, and and everyone ends up finding themselves there one way or the other.
And it's usually pretty close to the same damn thing every time.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why we all do the same stuff. I saw a guy. I won't dwell on it, but I got a new client the other day who came from another coach which is wild because I feel like you and I talk to pretty much all of the coaches in the industry, and we all do about the same thing. There might be a slight tweak, but we all do the same. This one coach does something very different.
I've seen
gear-wise, food-wise. Like I've never seen anything like this. It was the most absurd thing I've seen. And I just let the guy know that I wasn't sure if he was showing it to me because he wanted to continue down that path. I just let him know that I was not going to support either the gear or the food choices that were being made.
I don't want to get too far away from our topic, but what are they doing? Is it to look different? Is it to be different?
No, probably to be different. I think uniqueness, right?
Or do they actually believe what they're prescribing?
I probably to some degree, but possibly out of ignorance. So I'll say, right, there's a reason why we all do the same thing. Like, in case the viewers are wondering, pretty much every coach does for bodybuilding, for looks, right? Now, people have to understand, like, fitness and health per se are not necessarily the same thing. I think they converge at a certain point, but like,
they do.
That was like my wife had to learn that like bodybuilding wasn't necessarily health per se. I think there is a convergence, and I think there can be a convergence, but I don't think that they're necessarily related. So when people talk about, avocados are very healthy, that doesn't mean bodybuilders eat them.
Right.
So,
right.
Nuts, they're fine. They're very healthy. It doesn't mean I eat them.
Right.
Most bodybuilding coaches do, right? Moderate protein, moderate to high, depending.
Yep.
However you define that, and probably some sort of carb cycling with generally low fat. The fat tends to be cyclical with the carbohydrates; they're inverse.
100%.
Right? And then there's generally some sort of cheat meal worked in, right? What Skip is famous for, and that's really it, because we all look better after a crappy meal generally, but our digestion's all different. You might tolerate pancakes versus someone else might just tolerate more chicken and rice. It just depends. I don't think.
And that's a hard thing to prescribe.
You have to know the person.
You have to know the person, and the person has to know their self. And at one point when you're getting hungry, dude, you'll make some bad choices when you know you shouldn't be. You know what I mean?
But for me, that's where coaching always was. That's where it really made a difference. I think for lifestyle guys, now I've gone way far off the topic, but for lifestyle guys, I think they just need to learn the process, like things that you and I take for granted. You've just been doing, and that's why you can coach, because you understand this. If you can't do this for yourself, you can't coach.
Yeah.
I think though, it's like I just got completely lost there.
I took us way off topic.
It's
My apologies.
what was I talking about? The uniqueness? What was I talking about? I'll edit this out.
We were talking about more lifestyle guys versus amateur competitors versus general fitness, everything like that.
Where was I going with this food thing, though?
Mostly about the variety and things
Oh,
like
so what
that.
this guy? Oh, what this guy was doing. Sorry.
Yep. No, you're good.
Okay, so what this guy was doing basically was the complete opposite of what most of us do. I'm not sure what the intention was. It was super high fat, fatty meat with really low carb and weird carb sources when they were included, and then no testosterone in the cycle. It was just nandrolone and D-ball based, which the reasoning from the client was because of hair loss issues, which I get. But again, using testosterone with a topical 5-alpha reductase inhibitor would solve that issue generally, right? Or you just, like you and I, you just kind of get used to your hair falling out.
Just let it go.
It just happens.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's not that big of a deal. I think so. That I think was the initial thought process. But so people watching this understand Dianabol, although it does aromatize, it aromatizes a 7-alpha methyl estradiol, which is not a bioidentical estrogen. And because it's a methyl, it's methylated, it goes through the liver and it's magnified and it's toxic. So it's not an acceptable form of estrogen to use.
And the liver can't clear that estrogen either, can it?
No, not properly. No, and it's toxic. So it's not a valid excuse. In the 70s, they used it because they didn't know any better. They knew that it allowed some estrogen level. They just didn't understand it. But
and a lot of the times, when you're using stuff in the 70s, it's just what you can get.
Yeah, when it's available, right?
Yeah.
There was Primo, there was Deca, there was and there was D-ball, and there was randomly there was oral Winstrol and there was oral Anavar, but it was probably expensive and hard to come by.
Right. That doesn't mean it was a good choice. It was the only choice at the time.
Hell, guys in the 70s that I've spoken to, most of them were afraid of Anadrol.
Yeah.
It was terrifying to them because it was strong.
Yeah.
That wasn't the thing. But going back to that, I think with that, I think the amateur bodybuilders are cool because I think that they already kind of have an idea. So it's easy on from a coaching point of view, right, to get them in the right direction. Like
they're very relatable.
Yeah. Like I help you, like Skip is your coach, but like you and I have a coaching relationship where like I might guide you with something, but like you're very easy because you already know what you're doing. Like you're just looking for advice. Like, I don't feel great with this. What do I, you know what I mean? Or we need to take something to a different place. Like, that's easy.
A second pair of eyes.
Yeah. Right? And that's all.
Yep.
I think what I think is fascinating with lifestyle guys is that if you can get your hands on someone when they're brand new and they don't know any of this stuff, it's kind of cool to show this is why we eat higher carbs and lower fat, because look at how great you look now versus when you're eating a regular person's diet. That's what you look like.
Yeah.
Or, you don't need more drugs. Like if your hormones are low and you go on TRT, it's generally plenty for a 40-year-old man, right?
100%.
For, unless you have aspirations to be on the pro stage or whatever, it's a different story. But
agreed,
it's kind of cool. I find most of the pros, the problem is that they've been there for so long that they kind of are stuck in their ways, right? And
lots of debating.
It's lots of debating, and the risk. They're not adverse to risk at all, and it's for a coach, from a coach's point of view, it can be scary.
Yeah,
some of the things are very absurd for some of them. Some are not. But like I was saying before, I have one pro who's super open to learning stuff.
Yeah.
And it's funny because by looking at him, he should know more than me. But it's really a cool relationship to be able to teach someone of that level something new.
It's also just nice when someone trusts in you to that level. And like we spoke on this once before, I'm okay with feedback from clients, but when it comes off as debate or worse than debate, when it comes off as an argument, it's okay, well, you decided to pay me, you don't have to pay me, you know what I mean? And it was your choice to do that. So I mean, man, my guys are cool. I really don't have any complaints. One thing, as much as I love the amateur bodybuilders, this is more nowadays. One thing that you'll run into, and I'm sure you see this all the time, there's so much information on the internet that you're always battling everything. You know what I mean? And hey, this guy said this, this, and this, but you're saying this, this, and this. And if you put all three of us in a room together, my client, you, this other guy, a different guy, and we had a conversation, we would all boil down to the same answer.
Probably.
You know, this is why this guy was saying this, but really it didn't apply to you.
No, context is everything.
Yeah, exactly. He was saying it because of this and X, Y, and Z, and you just took it as an absolute, and now you want to apply it where it doesn't apply, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, you've been making this progress for X amount of months, X amount of years. Why are you going to change anything now? Because you saw a YouTube video that was attractive, you know?
With zero context.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, and that's like, and I probably get more grief over it. Like my stance on a lot of things is not the common denominator nowadays. Like I don't go with the thread on the Primo, the Masteron uses as an AI. I don't go on the high estrogen thing. I don't go on the estrogen and IGF. Like I'm coming from a place where I was taught certain things based on certain medical facts. And this is what we run with. And until there's data to change my mind, I'm going to stick with the facts and not, you know, so it's not popular. It's funny though, because the more I speak about a lot of these things, the more coaches come out of the woodwork and support what I'm saying.
I know.
They might just not be vocal to say it initially on their own.
And here, this circles back to the same thing. When guys are speaking on Masteron and Primo, are they against an AI, or are they knowing their audience? And they know a lot of these people watching their content have no ambition to compete. So maybe they shouldn't be taking doses high enough where they actually even need an AI. And maybe a little Primo or Masteron is really all they need.
It might be, depending on the situation, right?
Yeah, but then the high level guy watches it and he's like, "Oh, AIs are the devil," and it's like, really, since when? Because we've really been using them forever.
Yeah, and meanwhile, he uses a milligram every other day. So.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Like I don't know many high level guys that don't. They might not say that they do, right? That's the other thing is I think with going to the context thing is like one of the higher level people that speaks a lot about Masteron and testosterone cycles. There's a couple things that are missing in the context there, and I can say this because I'm not going to say his name, but I know him. I'm friends with him. Is the problem is that's not what he took to get there. That's what he takes to maintain that, right? It's not anywhere near the usage. Even currently, isn't what he's currently using. He's under exaggerating the dosage, and there were AIs definitely used at one point, and it's not even Masteron's a preferred substance. It's because of the absence of Primo.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a lot of things missing in the statement, but for popularity's sake or for, you know, editing, whatever, it comes out as, you know, this is what we run. And then people take it at face value and they don't realize that that's not even the story.
Right.
And,
it really is.
We all probably say things that get misinterpreted.
Like, well, and that's what I was going to touch on. And then I'll digress because people take these things, like you said, at face value. And the answer is generally somewhere in the middle. With most things, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you need a little Primo or a little Masteron, and maybe it's just you're using those compounds to negate side effects from a different compound, or maybe some people are using them for estrogen management. Maybe some people aren't using them at all. But when one guy, you know, is running 300 tests and 1,500 Masteron. But then you and I both know there's guys running 2, 3, 4 grams of tests with no Masteron and an AI, you know? So the answer can always fall in the middle somewhere.
Totally. And there's individual variability too, right?
100%.
What's going to work for you might be totally different for me.
And in bodybuilding, something hot and shiny comes out and we just roll with it. And the pendulum just swings. You know, Stan Efferding says to salt in a little bit of your water, and all of a sudden guys are drinking 25 grams of salt in their water every day. And it's like, how did this happen? How did we get here? You know,
what's funny about that too is miraculously blood pressure medicine sales went way up when that one's
yeah, exactly.
No one's good with that correlation either. So I'm outspoken about that too. I think there are guys like, you know what I mean? You and I have talked about blood pressure medicine. There's some people who need it and most people don't, and most people should not be using it prophylactically. But That's a whole nother topic. But
Right.
what I would first do is, if you have high blood pressure, is I would look at the amount of sodium that you're consuming first. And if you're drinking salt water,
Or just your diet water,
diet
cardio
sucks.
in general, you know.
Yeah, don't be overweight and don't drink salt water.
I have a lot of guys that come to me, hey, I want to take X, Y, and Z. Metformin, for example. Metformin's a funny one to me, and I don't have anything against it, but I said, well, what are your A1C numbers? And the response was, I don't know what those are. And I said, okay, fine. I said, well, you need to get blood work first. And secondly, what are kind of your fasted blood glucose levels? Well, I don't know what those are, and I don't know how to test those.
They just want to take metformin.
I said, why are we talking about metformin? Why are we even having this conversation? Why do you even know what the drug is?
Someone else is using it.
So someone else is taking it, and it has these, some people have these positive effects from it. Some people need to take it because they're diabetic, right? Or pre-diabetic. Or some need to take it because of insulin resistance from really high growth hormone, which not everyone gets, right? But how did this guy come across this drug when he doesn't know what A1C is, but he's considering using it? I'm like,
that's a problem.
Man, let's circle way, way, way back and not even discuss this ever again. You know what I mean? Let's not even talk about this ever again. We'll just forget about it. Super, super good dude. He's a great client. He's mostly just curious. He's mostly just curious.
So metformin is a wonderful drug when it's needed, right? In the population that's pre-diabetic or with mild diabetes, it's a great drug. It's been around since the 1920s. The pharmacokinetics actually aren't fully known, but it's a fantastic drug. The problem is, like you just said, like for someone like me, like my fasting glucose is in the 70s. My A1C is a 5, and that's eating thousands of grams of carbohydrates.
Right.
If I were to take metformin, it would kill me. So if
I
didn't test my blood sugar and I didn't know what my A1C was, and I came to a random coach and I said, I'd like to use metformin because I think I could eat more carbs.
Yeah.
It's like dial 9-1 and wait to dial the second one, because that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, so you're gonna go to bed. You're gonna take your metformin and go to bed, and you're not gonna wake up.
And that's the same way it is with insulin. People hear me outspoken about insulin. I'm not against insulin usage when it's warranted.
Right.
When it's not warranted, it is deadly.
Yeah.
It's just freaking stupid. Yeah. If you need it, then whatever. But when guys don't really need it and they don't understand it, the same thing. If I used Lantus, I wouldn't wake up.
No, you wouldn't.
That's a big deal, right? Because a lot of people know.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. And that's my whole concern, is that you go get blood work and talk to a doctor first before you make these like crazy decisions.
I'm all for people understanding their own bodies, but people are starting to take it too far. Prescribing themselves blood pressure medication. Okay, maybe sometimes benign. You know, maybe you can throw some telmisartan in at a low dose, see what it does. Okay, fine. When you're talking about prescribing things like metformin, and you're prescribing your own Lantus, and you really don't even have a full understanding of blood work and how it works in conjunction, right? You can look at one marker, oh, my A1C is a bit high, maybe I should start using Lantus. Well, where's the cascade? What else is that going to change? Do you even know? And what happens if it does? Then what do you do? Are you going to start throwing different drugs at it? You know, and it's like, how far are you willing to go with self-prescribing before you talk to a professional? And maybe you're going to be so sick at that time that you're certainly not growing muscle. You know,
so you could probably ask your wife. So I like to actually talk to my wife about these things because she's so far removed from fitness. Yes, she has such a great perspective because it's so obvious. I'll ask my kids too sometimes.
Yeah.
It's really cool because you and I spend most of our day talking to people that understand this stuff. If you talk to someone who totally doesn't, you'll get a better response. Like if I say to my wife something like, you know, X, Y, and Z is prescribing themselves a beta blocker.
Yeah.
You're like, why would anyone do that?
It's funny, isn't it?
Well, and she goes, where does that even come from? And I said, well, you can buy it on the black market. She's like, well, why would you do that? And I said, I think it comes from bodybuilders self-prescribe themselves steroids. So then they take it a step further. Well, then they're going to prescribe themselves ancillary drugs to manage those steroids.
Right.
So then there's no stopping. It's just a constant drug cart full of stuff.
Yeah.
But they're not ever seeing a doctor about. They're just, which again, I'm not bad about it. It is what it is. Just be aware that like some of these things take a lot of understanding I'm not a cardiologist. I'm not the one to ask about a beta blocker per se. I understand how they work, but like
Sure.
I would, if you actually have a problem with your heart, you should probably see a cardiologist.
100%.
I wouldn't be writing your own, going on with some website and just buying stuff.
No, and as coaches, we have to be extremely careful about that. Because when you speak, I'll speak for myself because you are at a PhD level. I'm not, and I will openly admit that. But if someone starts asking me about prescription drugs to a certain extent, I will say, "What did your doctor say?" Well, I don't have a doctor. Why? Why don't you have a doctor? What do you mean? Why are you asking some random guy on the internet what you should do instead of a dude that practices medicine? And of course, there's bad doctors out there. You and I know that as well.
And
But
everything.
there's bad everything. That's a good point. But we can't play doctor on the internet. It's very dangerous. And we know certain coaches that have gotten themselves into situations that are not good, right? And they have to live with that. And of course, everyone makes their own decision on what they're going to put in their mouth or, inject, right? But at the end of the day, like, we have to just be careful with, delivering
prescribing stuff.
Right. Exactly.
You don't want that on your future.
No. We'll get some questions rolling out for next week. So,
well, thank you again.
cool. Thanks again, Kurt. Appreciate you.